Very good morning, and Sukiotu. Well, my last talk was before Chinese New Year, and my first talk is after Chinese New Year. So it's the end and the beginning, which is always a continuous affair. And like what Sister Joanne mentioned, that Brother Charlie has been involved in the Dharma Dutta work for almost 45 years. Has he not burned out yet? And this is the question that we will be discussing verily this morning, on whether, how do we sustain ourselves, especially now we are in the age of sustainability. Even in business, in industries, you have this ESG campaign, environmental sustainability and governance. The most important question that provides the ingredient for us to sustain the passion, the zeal, the enthusiasm in trying to disseminate and propagate and propound the Buddha's teachings lies verily in this virtue called karuna and compassion. And actually we take this lesson from the Buddha himself, that the Buddha, after gaining his enlightenment, he did have some doubts whether to teach and expound the teachings to mankind. And during his ponder, he then decided that out of compassion for the many, he ought to teach and he ought to expound, he ought to enlighten everyone. Because he sees this element of suffering or unsatisfactoriness that is existing in each and everyone's mind. And in order to elevate and solve this element of unsatisfactoriness or dukkha, we call it, the only way is to enlighten them with knowledge so that they can realize. And upon realization, upon the right understanding of the root cause of all this dukkha and unsatisfactoriness, only then we can resolve the disputes. Only then we can resolve this unsatisfactoriness and unhappiness that has existed in mankind for lives after lives. So one of the virtues which we are talking about is compassion, which is the platform. I think many of us have realized that our first contact with the Dhamma or the teachings of the Buddha is through this icon called Guan Si Yin Pusat. And many of us actually had that icon placed very importantly in our homes when we are young. Our parents started this devotion to the virtues of compassion as expounded in the Goddess of Mercy, which we call here Guan Si Yin Pusat, or in Pali, Avalokiteswara. He or she. At the moment now, we do not want to determine the gender because apparently it was a he, then it was turned to a she. Even in the ancient times, during the Buddha's time, there was also this Hindu deity, which is called Avalokiteswara. But it was in the form of a male. Of course, when the icon was brought over to China, China then convert this gender to a female to represent the quality of compassion, which is found mostly and largely in the female gender. So irrespective of whichever gender, Kuan Yin Pusat impersonify. That means it creates a person out of a virtue for you to worship and for you to follow as an example. So when we worship Kuan Yin, we actually worship the virtue of compassion and dedicate our lives towards the practice of what she has actually shown by example. And she was shown to have helped many others by virtue of these verses that was found in the teachings that the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin or Bodhisattva Kuan Yin, Kuan Yin Pusat, cannot bear to hear the cries and the plea out of suffering. And whenever he hears this cry of suffering, or she hears this cry of suffering, she then has these determinations to try and help and to solve. So in other words, whenever we are in times of difficulties, when we are in times of suffering, we then come before the Kuan Yin and seek for her guidance, and by learning through her example, that will eventually help us to resolve the difficulties that we are facing and pacifies our mind. And that practice has been carried on for a very long time. Of course, in recent years, as we are exposed more to the Buddha's teachings in its proper manner, in the suttas that we learn, we then learn that compassion is one of the virtue or one of the perfections that was practiced by the Buddha in his quest for enlightenment or in the quest of Buddhahood. So it is actually a very important platform for all of us to be based on, and thus helping us not only to solve this very life's problem, it will then prepare us for the future, and at the same time helps to alleviate the suffering of the world. And that is our mission as a Dhammadutta, as a Buddhist follower of the Buddha's teachings. We have to have this very strongly embedded in our minds. Karuna is actually part of what we call the four sublime states, or we call them the Brahma Viharas. Brahma means good, what you call mannerisms, good attitudes, good frame of mind, mind of a Brahma. Vihara means abode, a platform, a house where we dwell our minds in, and that our mind should always be in these four Brahma Viharas at all times. Now, what are the four Brahma Viharas? They are metta, which is loving kindness. Kindness that is devoted to each and every one, and that we would like to always be on a goodwill, on a friendly basis, on a kind affection for each and every one that we meet or we associate. And we always wish them well. We always think of them well. We always wish them that they will be free from harm and danger. Karuna is also another platform, another abode where we dwell our minds in. And that is compassion. Compassion means we cannot bear to see others suffering. We have to do something about it. We have to act. We have to do, and we have to think of ways and means in order to alleviate their suffering. Mudita is sympathetic joy, or we call it altruistic joy. That we always rejoice in other people's happiness too. When they are happy, you are also happy. And because you are having that kind of altruistic joy, there is no jealousy. That when someone is successful, you are also successful for them. You rejoice in their success. But we do not become jealous. We do not become what we call envious of, oh, he must be happy because of some things which he has not done properly or not correctly. The envy does not exist in our mind because we are in the abode of mudita. And then upekkha. Upekkha means equanimous mind, maintaining a stability of the mind, not disturbed by any vicissitudes of blame and gain, praise and loss, happiness and unhappiness. Whenever all these vicissitudes happens in our life, our mind remains stable, does not get shaken so easily. We maintain our stability. So you have a stable mind all the time. And it's always very important to have that stability so that we don't fall further into the traps and into the cavities of suffering. Because each time we are desperate, each time we are angry, and each time we are emotional, unstable, then we will tend to make further mistakes. We will sink deeper into unsatisfactoriness or dukkha. So in order to prevent ourselves from sinking and moving into the direction of dukkha, you maintain your mind and calmness, maintain your peace. And with a peaceful mind, you will always find a good solution. But when you are desperate, you cannot find a good solution. That's why sometimes when we are in trouble, we say, okay, stay calm, be at peace. And when we are in that state of calm mind, the answers will come. Especially when we are in the exam hall. And then we cannot think of the answer. Then you panic. The more you panic, the worse it goes away. It disappears from our mind. It doesn't come. So rest, be calm, and some even to the extent of lying down, take a short nap. In the exam hall, when you have a blackout, and as you calm down yourself, the answers pops up. And therefore, when you apply upon this problem that you are facing, eureka, you resolved it. And calm mind is always very important. And that's the meaning of upekkha, or equanimous mind. Now, these four sublime states are considered to be the ideal social attitudes, the springs underlying the ideal modes of conduct towards all living beings. If we can keep guard of these four virtues or four sublime states or abodes, it will be a great healer of social tension and conflict. If only Biden, Zelensky, Putin can maintain a good abode of minds, we will not be facing a lot of troubles now happening in the world. The four sublime states is also the builder of harmony and cooperation between living beings. They serve as potent antidotes to the poisons of hatred, cruelty, envy, and partiality, which is so widespread now in our modern life. And every day, each time you open the newspaper, you feel so tense, you feel so disturbed, you feel so, what you call, unsure of the future. Sometimes we say, switch off your TV. Keep your newspaper, don't read them. And thus the mind rests in upekkha, in mudita, in karuna, and in metta. Then you'll find that life is not bad after all. It's worth living after all. it's much more peaceful and happier. And that's all what we are seeking for actually as living beings, as putujanas. We are all in search of this. We call it happiness that lasts, peacefulness of the mind, and calmness and harmony in accordance to the natural forces. Now, the Brahma Viharas are incomparable with a hating state of mind. Hate is not overcome by hate. Hate is overcome by love. If only this message can get into the minds of our leaders in the human mankind world, we will have many decades of peace and harmony. We'll be trading happily, we'll be living happily, we'll be enjoying our fruits of labor. But we get disruptions, we get wars, we get crises, we get downturns because of this inability to handle the element of hatred. And in that, we are then akin to Brahma if we practice the 4 sublime states. But the transient ruler of the higher heavens in the traditional Buddhist picture of the universe, which is Brahma, he's almost like the king of heavens. And Brahma ensures and try to practice these 4 Brahma Viharas in that heaven itself and try to maintain peace. And thus, we ought to learn from him. Now, why are the Brahma Viharas called Vihara? Because they should be the mind's constant dwelling places where we feel at home. That means it arises in our mind so easily. It arises in our minds as and when. And they should not remain merely places of rare short visits. In other words, compassion. Most of us are compassionate on occasion. Visa Day is coming. So we must be compassionate on that day. So we go and collect a lot of coins. And we'll go to a temple. And eventually we see a lot of homeless and people who are in poverty. And then we say, okay, we go and give and donate. We give a lot of dana on that day itself. We go and visit the home for the orphans, the home for the mentally retarded, the aged homes on that day, so that we can exhibit our compassion and contribute some joys to their life. But is it only on that day? And for the rest of the other 364 days, it is never in our minds. And then next visa come, oh yeah, I need to do this again. So you got to renew your battery, your charge. Now, in other words, our mind should become thoroughly saturated by them. Then they should be our inseparable companions. And we should be mindful of them in all our common activities. In other words, it is perpetually inside us, in our daily practice, in our minds at all times. Therefore, coming to compassion, we say that compassion removes the heavy bar, opens the door to freedom, and makes the narrow heart as wide as the world, because you don't only limit yourself to a horizon, it goes beyond the horizon. Compassion takes away from the heart the inert weight, the paralyzing heaviness, and it gives wing to those who cling to the lowlands of self. So through compassion, the fact of suffering remains vividly present in our mind. We see it. We sometimes experienced it. Now, even at times when we personally are free from it, we are not in states of suffering. We are enjoying certain moments of our happiness, because the happiness only happens in fleeting moments. When the conditions for its arising disappears or deteriorates and then go away, that happiness then ceases. So our happiness goes up and down. Sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are disturbed and unhappy. So it gives us the rich experience of suffering as we engaged in it, thus strengthening us to meet it prepared when it befalls upon us one day or another. Remember, we can never be free from dukkha. Dukkha is here to stay until and unless you gain your enlightenment and free yourself from the bounds of suffering. So compassion reconciles us to our own destiny by showing us the life of others. And we see the suffering in others. We will then be able to realize that this suffering is not solely owned and solely possessed by only others. It can be ours in one way or another. When we see an aged person, difficult to stand, difficult to eat, shivering in pain, and feeling very uncomfortable, we will realize that one day we will be like that. When we experience that through our compassionate activities, we will then be able to realize that when this happens to us, we should then learn how to be compassionate to our own self. And that self-compassion will then arise. Now, it is a question of empathy or sympathy. And what is empathy? It's the term we use for the ability to understand other people's feelings, as if like we are having them ourselves. In other words, we feel the suffering. We can sense, we can experience the suffering that they are in. And that's called empathy. But what is sympathy? Sympathy refers to the ability to take part in someone else's feelings, mostly by feeling sorrowful about their misfortune. That means to say, you now want to take part in that suffering and see how you can alleviate it, how you can remove it, and how you can cease from it. And that is exhibiting sympathies by trying to enlighten, to trying to release them from their suffering. First, of course, you feel it. Second, you sympathize and do something about it. And these are the two qualities of compassion. It is the two limbs, we call it. Empathy and sympathy. So compassion also includes those who at the moments may be happy, but of course they act with an evil and deluded mind, understanding their position. So sometimes compassion is not only limited to those who are suffering and they are happy, or those who are what you call happy and then eventually having a little of suffering. We also know that there are people who are what you call at moments of happiness, but they have that evil and deluded mind, and they also need help. So in their present deeds, we can foresee their future state of distress, and we want them to avoid it. So that is also compassion in trying to do something about it. That means we have the compassionate heart to say, let me try to help them to elevate them from this evil and deluded mind, so that they will be free from this kind of dukkha or suffering in the future. So it is also a preventable action. So the compassion of the wise man does not render him a victim of a suffering, But his thoughts, his words, his deeds are full of pity. But his heart does not waver. Unchanged, it remains serene and calm. How else should he be able to help? So therefore, if there is compassion that arises in our hearts, this is a sublime nobility and the intellect which knows, understands it, and now is ready to help. So compassion is a strength within you, and then it gives strength to the other. And this is the highest compassion. You have that strength, and you convey that strength for them to resolve. So what are the 5 essential steps to increase your compassion? And sometimes we call it self-compassion. Now, I mentioned this word self-compassion is, like what Sister Joanne said correctly, is sometimes when you have a lot of compassion, you lose yourself. In fact, sometimes when you engage in too much compassion, you yourself suffers. You yourself falls out of the system. And eventually, you should now develop compassion for your own self first. And we always say that charity begins at home. If you are not resolved, if you don't have compassion for your own self, and you cannot resolve the suffering and the unsatisfactoriness within yourself, then it's very difficult to help others. It's the same thing as when we are not joyful. You cannot spread joy to others. You cannot make others happy. Same thing if you are not free from dukkha. You cannot help others to be free from dukkha. So there are altogether 5 steps to increase your self-compassion. 1 is to learn to forgive yourself. You may indulge, you may have certain mistakes, which then give rise to this kind of dukkha or unsatisfactoriness. But before you can forgive yourself, you will never be able to resolve. So first thing, importantly, is forgive yourself. Yes, I've done something wrong. Yes, I have not done it correctly. Yes, I have not followed accordingly. May I be forgiven. And only when you have that peace of having been forgiven, then your mind is now straightened in order to do something for others and to be free from that dukkha. Step 2 is to employ a growth mindset. That means get out of your circle, get out of your tempurung, we call it, your shell. Go beyond your shell. Go beyond your capabilities and try to do something more for yourself rather than say, oh, I'm limited by only this, level. Step 3 is to express gratitude, because gratitude is the best pacifying emotions. Until and unless we learn to be grateful, we never learn to forgive ourselves. We never learn to be helpful to others, to repay back our debts, to build up our repertoire of goodness. So gratitude that exists in our mind, katanuta, is another very strong emotions or platform that compassion rests on. Because sometimes when you are not grateful, you tend to reserve yourself from exhibiting, from doing something out of your circle. Now find the right level of generosity. That means your capacity, your limitations, things which you do not have, you cannot give. Things which you do not have enough for yourself. Sometimes you cannot give. So therefore, we say charity begins at home. As long as your home is happy, as long as your home is provided for, as long as everyone inside is happy and free from unsatisfactoriness, then only you can go outside to help others. So therefore, if your capacity has that little extra where you can spare, then you practice your generosity. Because sometimes compassion, you need to be generous. You need to give away. You need to provide. And of course, the last step, 5, is be mindful of what you are doing, because it has to register in the mind. It has to be a strength within the mind. Therefore, you can only develop this by being mindful of the actions, the thoughts, and the speech. So self-compassion is another very important practice, that not only do we exhibit compassion to others, we always start with compassion to oneself. And that is important, because it is part and parcel of common humanity. You are in that humanity itself. So therefore, you are the first target. And because you are the first target, you have to take care of that first target before you take care of the other targets. Self-compassion also involves recognizing that suffering and personal failure is part of the shared human experience. We share all common experience. Whenever we see suffering, whenever we see deprivation, whenever we see loss, blame, we always say that this is actually our doing, as well as also within our circle. Self-compassion requires taking a balanced approach to one's negative emotions, so that the feelings are neither suppressed nor exaggerated. Now take for example, when you are doing so much for others, when you are doing out of compassion, helping so many people, but at the end of the day, you see yourself sliding, you see yourself burning out, you see yourself being deprived, you see yourself having what you call less happiness, then that is not the correct methodology. So therefore, we are now advised to practice daily a list of self-compassion techniques or meditation. But it's important to actually sit down and say, "Oh, I watch my own body. Relieve my own body of its suffering and pain." And when you practice the first one, we call it affectionate breathing. When you breathe in and out, you feel your body relaxing. You feel your body free from the stress that you are caught in. You feel your body being what you call relieved of the pain that is throbbing at you, the stress that is burdening your head. You say, "May I be free from this stress. May I be free from this pain. May my body be free from this pain." Then you relaxes your body, feel your muscles relaxing. Taking care of your body, let it breathe well, let it move well, let it flow well. And as you feel the wellness existing in your body, the strength within you will then arise. And that is the first stage of self-compassion. In other words, be kind to your own body. Make sure that your own body is not abused. Make sure that your own body is not moving beyond the limits of stress. Make sure that your own body is not moving beyond the limits of pain. Because sometimes all this can overwhelm us. And then we say, "Oh, I give up." And that is called burnout. You do a compassionate body scan. And this is one of my favorite practice. And every time I have this exercise, I remember there was this group of Singaporean Buddhist Fellowship members who came to Wisdom Park. And I was conducting the session one morning, and I said, okay, I will start with this a compassionate body scan. Of course, before I start, I give them one method of calibration. They have to calibrate their mind first. It's like your weighing machine, you know. You must be able to feel, you must be able to spot the parts of your body that you are intending to relax, that you are intending to de-stress. And so we had this exercise of putting the hands together, and then eventually after that, choose the finger which is the shortest. And then we say, okay, put your finger on your thigh. And then after that, we say, okay, relax the finger. Feel the finger. And they can really feel the finger as the finger relaxes. And after that, then I say, okay, put your hands together now. Put it together and see that finger, whether it has grown longer or not. And true enough, that finger grew longer than the other. And everybody will be starting to laugh. They enjoyed the exercise, but that was with the intention of calibrating the mind, to be able to spot the point where you want. Of course, I started with put the finger on your hand, and then feel your finger, focus your mind of your finger feeling the hand. And then without changing position, now feel the hand, feeling the finger. So you change. And that is where you sharpen the focus of the mind and zero in on the point where you want to focus. So when you do this compassionate body scan, is that we start with the forehead. And you can actually feel the forehead muscles relaxing, relaxing, relax. Then you relax your eye muscles. You relax your nose muscles. You relax your cheeks muscles and your mouth. You relax your ear. You relax the back of your head. You relax your neck. You relax your shoulder. You relax your upper arm, your lower arm. You relax your hands. Then you relax your chest. You relax your abdomen. You relax your back. You relax your hips. You relax your legs, your thigh. Then you relax your lower calf. And then you relax your feet. And as you relax part by part, you can see the muscles relaxing, relax, and you can sometimes even feel the twitch of the muscles as they relax. A compassionate body scan. Enjoy relaxing your own body. Feel your own body relax first. Then, of course, we move into loving kindness meditation. This is also another way of being compassionate to your own body. And that now this takes care of the mind. Free the mind of grasp. Visualize your relatives, visualize your parents, visualize your brothers and sisters, visualize your spouse, visualize your children. And as you see them appearing in your mind, see them smiling. As they smile at you, you smile back. You wish them well. Because when you see them smiling, you see them as healthy. You see them as well. You see them as happy. And that is loving kindness. You wish them well all the time. So as you see one by one, as you move from one next of kin, you even move to your colleagues, your friends, your bosses, your subordinates, and of course, lastly, your enemies, if you can. If you can see them smiling at you, because you are so attuned to them frowning at you, but now you see them smiling at you, you will have a smile back at them. you radiate a lot of good feelings and loving kindness. So as you relax, you then note your own emotions. Feel yourself that you are relaxed. Feel yourself that you are now rejoicing in what you have done. Feel yourself that you are happy with what you have today. Be grateful for this body. Be grateful for this life. And as you understand this and have good, strong, positive emotions about this, then you are compassionate to your own self. That means you learn not only to take care of others, you also learn to take care of yourself. And that is called self-compassion. Now, the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion is that self-esteem requires you to compare yourself with others. Because when you compare with others, then you say, I am in higher esteem. I am in a more confident esteem than him. I'm in a more fortunate esteem as the other person. So there is a level of comparison. But the moment you get yourself compared with others, there will always arise some animosity. There will always arise some envies or envy. There will always arise in you some negativities. So self-esteem is that when you compare that you are better than other people in some way. So on the other hand, self-compassion requires no comparison. Because you only have yourself to take care. You only have yourself to focus on. You only have yourself to be compassionate to. So rather involves being warm and understanding towards yourself, and even at times of failure. You say, well, I'm in states of what you call negativities. I feel a sense of loss and failure. But vicissitudes are such that it rise and fall. It appear and disappear. So through our understanding of the characteristics of phenomena, the characteristics of life as we learn in the Buddha's teaching, that all are impermanent. Anicca. Anatta. There's no permanency in any phenomena, including even your emotions, including even your vicissitudes of life. Today you may be happy, but it doesn't remain permanent all the time. One day you will be unhappy. But when you're unhappy, don't worry, because it is impermanent. One day you will rise. We always say the stock market. When you lose in the stock market and the market goes deep down and you become desperate, you become angry, you become unhappy. If you understand the vicissitudes of phenomena, it will rise, it will fall, and when it falls, it will rise again. It is always in the cyclic phenomena or existence. Just to deviate away from compassion, just to understand this cyclic phenomena, is that we are all masses of energy. We are all different forms of energy. We are all combinations of a number of energies, especially the two big ones. And we call it physical energy and mental energy, mind and matter, mind and body, nama and rupa. And what are these? These are two masses of energy combining with each other, creating what we call a psycho-physical being, called a human being, called an animal. But you are still a mass of energy combined. And you see our common word is called energy. The universe is a big mass of energy. This building, although you see is solid, but it's actually a combination and a mass of energy existing through its binding, through its attraction of electromagnetic. It binds itself together into a form. Same thing like this, mind and physical energy binds together to create a form which you call Brother Charlie Chia. But actually it's just a mass of energy appearing in front of you. It can disintegrate. It can break up. It can go back to other forms of energy. But the moment we use this word energy, then this sine curve or these waves will occur. Why? Because all energy have frequencies and all energies have wavelength. And the moment you have energy and wavelength, then you have what we call the rise and fall. Wavelength means the distance between the rise of this wave and the next rise of the next wave. So the distance between these two is called the wavelength. The number of waves within a period of time that exists is called frequency. And all energy have their wavelength. And all energy have their frequency. In other words, some frequency you can see and hear. Some frequency you can't see and hear. Some wavelength you can touch and feel. Some wavelength you cannot touch and feel. But they all exist in different forms and different wavelengths and different frequencies. Sound, light, heat, all water, wind. They are all forms of energy. So therefore, when you use the word energy, you use this word wavelength, you use this word frequency, you use this word called the sine curve, the ups and down. Then you can see that there is a rise. But the rise is not the beginning, neither is the end. It is the beginning of the next fall. And the fall is the beginning of the next rise. The end of each fall is the beginning of each rise. The end of each rise is the beginning of each fall. The end of each breath is the beginning of the next breath. The end of each life is the beginning of the next life. This is the science of our existence. Therefore, if we have understood this life of existence, then our mind will be very clear that anything that rises will not remain, and its crest will not remain in its what you call supreme and top. It will come down. And when it comes down, it will not be the end of all the downs. Because eventually it will rise, and it creates what we call a flux. It creates what we call a continuity. And you will continue and continue until that energy is put to a stop in that form. Because energy can neither be created nor destroyed. You all see balloon already? Liao Kiu Bo, they call it. Chima, they call it in Singapore. But this understanding will then help us to realize that there is nothing for us to, nothing, Kong. There's nothing for you to hold, to arrest, and to say remain permanent, don't change. Because anicca, change. Anatta, there's no permanent for you to attach so that it does not change. If you are attached to something that you don't want to change, but it changes, then it will turn into disappointment or unsatisfactoriness. Dukkha. Anicca, anatta, dukkha. So therefore, when you understand this compassion itself, you will understand these emotions, you understand this zeal, Eventually, then you'll be able to say that one day, this cycle will happen. And when this cycle happens, and I'm in the midst of it, and I cannot handle it, that is when I will be miserable. So that's why we all Buddhists always every day talk about old age, sickness, and death. Then they say, choy, don't talk about death. Old age, sickness can, but don't talk about death. Very pantang. But we should talk more about death. Because death is the beginning of the next episode. No doubt it's the end of this episode. Because of continuity, because of flux. The ending is the beginning. Of course, the beginning is the road to the ending. And then the cycle will repeat itself. So therefore, when we have that compassion inside and we realize this, all the more the zeal will then continue to say, I want to help. I want to do something to reduce, to mitigate, to elevate, and to support. And that's where that compassion that you don't want to see this suffering goes higher and higher. You reduce it as much as you can. And the first thing is to reduce it here. And once you have done so, then you reduce out. So compassion or self-compassion at the moment now is extending the kindness and love and understanding about yourself towards yourself. So having self-compassion means the following. We love and accept ourselves. We love. I love Charlie Chia. Therefore, I must protect Charlie Chia. I must take care of this body. I must nourish this body well. I must rest this body well. I must have concern for this body and try to resolve the tension and the stress that exists within this body. I must make sure that I feed this body well, not with all the junks, but with all the nourished food, so that it will be able to continue to do the things that it hopes to do. I must nourish this mind and keep it at peace, keep it at equanimity, keep it calm, and keep it positive and happy. Because through these positive attitudes, then only the mind becomes happy. And a happy mind always contributes to the happy minds of others. If you are not happy yourself, then you can never make others happy. So therefore, the first thing is to make yourself happy. And we always say charity begins at home. And when you are happy, others will also be happy. And we understand that failing and making mistakes are nothing but just episodes in our life. Today I may fail, but tomorrow I may succeed. Same thing where today I succeed, be careful, because tomorrow I may fail, so I have to be mindful. So understanding these cycles and understanding these, what do you call, ups and downs, the vicissitudes of life, we call it. Now, this is a normal part of human experience. So we are capable of forgiving ourselves. Learn to forgive yourself. Don't always feel guilty about things. Because you may have made a mistake, you may have done something wrong. You may have created a very serious breach of the code or ethics or precepts. And the moment you get dwelled in it, you get disturbed by it, you get burdened by it, your mind is never at peace. You never do any positive things after that. I know of some of our fellow devotees who comes back after a talk, say on karma, and then they realize that they have breached certain, what do you call, precepts, and that can lead them to suffering from bad karma. Then they ask me, what shall I do? I say, yeah, do you realize that you have done something bad? Something not good? Have you realized that you have actually broken the precepts or breached it? If you have, then promise yourself, try not to do it again. Promise yourself that you will forgive yourself for this. And when your mind is at peace, and when your mind is happy and calm, do something do some good merits, do some good karma. Because we know karma is balanced. You have good karma, you have bad karma. When you're experiencing good karma, are you experiencing bad karma? No. So therefore, when you have sown the seeds of bad karma, and when you have sown the seeds of good karma, which seeds do you want to germinate? Then you provide the right conditions, the right soil, the right conduciveness for it to arise. A good mind, a happy mind, a positive mind is good conditions and good soil for good seeds of karma to arise and take effect of our purpose. When we are happy, when we are at peace, you notice that a lot of good things happens in your life, one by one, because the conditions is right. But when you are desperate and you are fearful, you are angry, you are jealous, you are so many negativities, that kind of conditions are suitable for your bad seeds. That's why Hokkien lang kong, pai su je lai, zhou je lai. It happened. It leads from one to another. Because why? You sink further into desperation. You sink further into fear and unhappiness. And therefore that condition is suitable for some more. But if you remove the oxygen, remove the conduciveness for your bad karmic seeds, what happened to the seeds? They will then stay hibernated. They will stay quiet because the condition is not right. And a seed can be stored for long, long years. You can store a seed for 100 years. As long as you don't provide the water and the right condition, the seed remains a seed. Even until the last day, when you attain your enlightenment and passed away into nirvana, that seed could still be there, but no chance to germinate. And that's how we overcome our karmic seeds. And that's how we balance our karmic seeds. That's why I always want to give a talk entitled Karmic Management. It's a long talk, a lot of techniques, but you manage your karma. Because you want good karma to happen, you don't want bad karma to happen. But you can do it. All you have to do is condition our minds. And our mind is very important. And that's why in our practice of the Buddha's teaching, it's all talking about how you balance this mind. So we treat ourselves with kindness and respect. We give ourselves the self-care that we need. And we're always a good friend to this body and mind. Especially when things go wrong. Don't make an enemy out of your own body and beat some people when they are in desperation. They beat their head, they beat their body. Sayang lah. This body not easy to take care, and not easy to get. Next time when you pass away or into what do you call in the later life, then how sure are you coming back to have this type of body anymore? Chances very rare. So if there's rare a birth, then better take good care first. Every day jaga, pet it to sleep also lah, kaki lai. So I believe that self-love is when you take care of your personal needs, your wants, your health. Because it also happens when someone is so comfortable, so confident and accepting of oneself, that outside opinions or outside forces will not deter them from their goals, dreams, passion, desires, and happiness. A lot of people say, Brother Charlie Chia, you have been trying to be a Dhammadutta for 45 years. You don't feel tired. You don't feel that you are burnt out. Why? Because of the joys. Why? Because of the happiness that you accrue. Because of the rejoicing. And that's why we call it merits. Merits means punya. Punya means rejoice in your mind. You feel happy about what you have done. You feel happy about what you have contributed. You feel happy that what you have actually moved people into the good side of life. And when you see others are happy, the altruistic platform comes up and says, I am happy for you. When someone come and tell you and says, Brother Charlie, I heard your Dharma talk 30 years ago. I enjoyed, I practice it, and I'm very happy about it. How do you feel? That you have a part in that contribution. You also rejoice. And that rejoicing is in your mind. And that is the punya now you want to share. Not only to your departed relatives, the punya you want to share even with the ordinary kinsmen and relatives and friends. And that brings me to this week's, what you call a theme, in the sense that we are all going to observe Qingming. Qingming is a day we remember our departed ones. But we don't send them US dollars. We don't send them COVID masks. We don't send them bank account. We don't send them gold and what you call Louis Vuitton bag. The shops are actually having a wild time now, starting from next week. But the most important thing that we want to share with them is punya, or 功德给他们. What do you mean by 功德? 德 means punya, merits. But before you can transfer these merits to them, you yourself got to have the capital. Ada modal, tak ada modal, how to transfer? Your bank account empty. So therefore, you must have done something good, even within this week, within the next week, just before you transfer. Do something which brings benefits to others and bring rejoicing in your minds. And then says, by virtue of this rejoicing in my mind, may I transfer and share this with my departed relatives. Now remember, the moment you share this, idang me natinang hotu sukita hontu nateyo, visualize them appearing in your mind, happy and smiling and participating in these merits that you have accrued, that you are happy and may he or she be happy. Of course, we always say that sometimes when you 功德, you send out, sometimes return to sender because address Sarah. Wrong address, or they are not to be found. Well, there are certain realms where you cannot contact. But most of our relatives, somehow or other, we always believe that they are in one of these realms where can be contacted one, especially the lower realms. And if they are in the lower realms, their physical form, their energy, the physical energy is very limited. But their mental energy is still equally strong. And thus they have frequencies, and we also have frequency. If they have a frequency of 98.8, 988, and you also transmit 988, do you listen to the same music? So therefore, your two minds are joined together. And when your mind and their mind are of the same frequency, and you are rejoicing, are they rejoicing? If they are rejoicing, sudah terima, transferred. And thus, when they are rejoicing, do they think of the suffering that they are in, the unhappiness that they are in? Because your mind can only do one thing at one time. When you are happy, you are not unhappy. When you are unhappy, you are not happy. You cannot be happy and unhappy at the same time. That is called xiao liao. So your mind can only do one thing at one time. So when your mind is rejoicing and your mind is happy, at that moment, you are having what you call relief from your suffering. And that's the meaning of 功德给他们. not sent by courier service, DHL. Think of them. So during this period, while you are in the, what you call the tombs, or in the memorial park, or in the columbarium, when you put your hands together, rejoice in the good deed that you have done. Listening to the Dhamma is also a good meritorious action. Like today, you have participated in the Dhamma discussion. You have learned something about the Dhamma. And therefore, by this rejoicing, may they also receive the same rejoicing as you. And thus, you recite idang me natinang hutu sukita hontu nateyo. Then you transfer these merits to their minds, wherever they are born. And thus they rejoiced and be free from their dukkha. And that's how you elevate their unhappiness. That's how you elevate their misfortunes and difficulties in their lives. Now, what is self-compassion? Self-compassion, like we want to simplified it, summarized it, is called mindfulness. Be aware. Be aware of what you are doing. Be aware of how you are going to be compassionate to yourself. Self-kindness is that be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, watch out for yourself. And lastly, connectedness. That you remember that everyone in this universe are part and parcel of this big mass of energy. And that when you have compassionate emotions that is radiated out, that you want others to be happy, these vibrations reverberates within this big mass of energy, the universe that we are in. And thus, they will also feel the same ambience and vibration. And that's what we call radiating your metta, radiating your compassionate, radiating your altruistic joy, and radiating your peacefulness and stability of the mind. The 4 Brahma Viharas. What is your self-care checklist from now onwards? Constantly exercise your self-care, constantly exercise your self-exercise, relieve your body of the stress and pain, relieve your mind of the stress and negative emotions. Mental stimulation, think of all the good things that you could have done. Think of all the, what you call, survey. Who are the people that is in need of help? Who are the friends that is in trouble? Have that compassionate heart and think of them and says, how shall I help them? Give them a call, render some comforting words, or even to the extent as what do you need? Send them the material, what you call possessions. Then you have, of course, this spiritual stimulation. In other words, encourage them, be a good Kalyana Mitra. Be a good, what we call, Dhamma friend. Bring them to centers, to Nalanda, and educate them. Provide for them so that they are free from the little unwholesome deeds that they have done and reduced bit by bit. Of course, you don't expect them to change and next morning become a monk or a nun. Take a break with a friend. Go out with them. Care for them. Have compassion in that manner. Do a good deed. Do something good. And keep it as your karmic seed. And that you may need it all the time. I always tell my friends and my brothers and sisters and says, look, do a good deed. Remember that day, remember that moment. And then every day when you want to think of a good deed, remember that deed. And keep on exercising it until one fine day when you are on your deathbed. When you are in your deathbed, you are actually sometimes not in control of your mind. Your mind wanders all over the place because you could be in state of doubt. You could be in state of desperation. You could be in state of fear. And when that happens, you really need to have some conditions or regular or mannerisms that arises to be effective for you. And if you have been thinking of a good deed every day, and you say, what good deed have I done? That good deed automatically pops up strongly because every day you chia you. And thus it becomes so strong that it becomes one strong good deed that comes out, dominates your mind. And if you breathe your last with that good thought in your mind, there's very good chance that you will be born in a happy realm. And of course, give yourself a treat. Take care of your body. Sometimes you need to go to a spa. Go for a spa. Relax your body. If you need to go for a good meal, nourishment meal, go for your meals. Don't stinge. Treat yourself. Every day belanja others, don't belanja sendiri. Tak boleh. And then of course, once a while, congratulate yourself lah. That is self-compassion. Wow. Congratulate Brother Charlie Chia for delivering a talk today. Well done. So, lastly, this is an exercise which I always do for the past almost 20 over years. And I have not been doing it for the last 3 years because of COVID. And this year will be my first trip out of COVID to a place called Ladakh. And in Ladakh, we practice this, what we call compassion in action. Humanistic Buddhism is another word. Is that sometimes when we talk about compassion, it becomes a theory. It becomes just something to learn, but we never, what you call, put it into action. And that when we put it into action, it must be a long-lasting action. That means it lasts over a period of time. You do it almost every single day of your life, rather than once a year when the time comes. And that is the meaning of compassion in action. And in this place, Nalanda has actually organized a trip last 2019. Brother David, we went in 2019. So 2019, the last trip. Of course, Brother Charlie has gone many times. Right? And in this campus itself, we bring the children from the mountains. They could be from the nomadic tribes. They could be from the village, which has no power, no electricity. And the children could be left, what you call, in the village schools, which is of very low quality and sometimes even no education. And especially the girls. So the first batch that came to the Mahabodhi school is actually a batch of 10 girls. Brought from the mountains, very dirty, hair also all locked up. Never washed, maybe they wash once a year because of the cold weather. And finally, this batch of 10 girls now are doctors, teachers, headmaster, and successful people in life. And out of 10, about 8 of them are already mothers with good, healthy children. So Bante Sangasena is now a grandfather. Having brought up these 10 girls and then subsequent batches. Of course, after the 3rd or 4th year, the parents of boys complain. He says, how can you only take girls? You must also take boys. So there was a boys' wing, a girls' wing, and of course there is a boarding school. And subsequently, there is an aged home to take care of the aged. Because in Ladakh, most of the aged are left wandering in the street with the prayer wheel. And no proper food and no proper shelter. So they were all taken in, and a hospice was actually created for them to spend their last days in comfort position. And of course, you have the monks and the nuns, little monks and little nuns, who eventually will be brought up with education. So they are educated monks, and some of the monks have degrees now, degrees in education. So they are able to teach, they are able to have a degree, and subsequently, they also serve the Dhamma at the Buddhist mission. So this is a good action, compassion in action, which we do every year. And we, what you call, collect sponsorship of children. So some of our members in Nalanda are also sponsors of the young little children. And as they grow up, they go to the universities. And some of our sponsors sponsor them right up to the university level. So it's a good compassionate activities to alleviate the suffering and the difficulties that they face, and thus giving them a good chance to live a comfortable and well well-deserved life. So this is really putting compassion into action rather than talk about it and speak about it and never do anything about it. So compassion must be a long-term involvement rather than a short-term involvement. So with that, I hope that today we have talked a lot about compassion. We have talked a lot about self-compassion, and finally, of course, compassion in action. Thank you very much, and may you all be well and happy. Sa.